For number 17, it's basically walking us through how to find the distance and the midpoint. The distance formula will be given to you on the test. It's on that blue formula sheet. The midpoint is not. You need to know the midpoint formula. You need to know the midpoint formula. You need to know the midpoint formula. You do not need to know the distance. You need to know the midpoint. Need to know. All right, so now I'm going to start with the distance. It says find the distance and midpoint between the following points, 10, -2, and 13, 4. Leave the answer for the distance as a simplified radical. Leave answer for midpoint as an ordered pair. So it's important to remember, if I'm asking you for the midpoint, it will be a point on the graph, which will be an ordered pair. So at the end, don't try to add them together or subtract them or multiply them or anything like that. You'll have two separate answers. One is going to be your x value, one will be your y value, comma between, and in parentheses like a point. So now, my points are 10 and -2, or 10, -2, and 13, 4. It tells me to find the difference between my x's. So I'm going to say that this is x1, y1, x2, and y2. It doesn't matter which one you call x1 and x2. I'm just going to label them to keep everything straight. So the difference between my x's, I'm going to do x2 minus x1. So the difference between those is going to be 13 minus 10, which is 3. So the difference between my x's is 3, and that's going to be my A. Now I'll do the difference of my y's. So I'm going to do y2 minus y1. I'll draw an arrow so we can follow everything. y2 is 4 minus y1, which is -2. Anytime, we're always going to be subtracting, but if there's a negative number, make sure you put in parentheses what you are doing. So if I'm doing 4 minus -2, that's going to become 4 plus 2. So the answer to this is going to be 6. So the difference between my y's is 6. That's now my B term. Now I'll plug those into my equation. A squared, so that will be the square root of 3 squared plus 6 squared. 3 squared is 9, and 6 squared is 36. If I do 36 plus 9, or 9 plus 36, I will get the square root of 45. So C will be the square root of 45. Now I need to reduce and simplify my radical. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write the square root of 45, and I'm going to think what two numbers, when I multiply them together, gives me 45. Well, if I do 9 times 5, I get 45. 5 is prime, meaning there's nothing I can multiply to get 5 except for 1 and 5, which isn't very helpful, so I'm just going to ignore 5. But 9, I can get 9 by multiplying 3 and 3. 3 is prime, meaning I can't multiply anything except for 1 and 3 to get 3. So I'm done. All of these numbers are what we call prime. They can't be factored any further. So I'll circle my pair. I have a pair of 3's. That pair goes on the outside. This represents the pair. I don't need to write both, just one. Square root everything that's the end of a branch or the end of a tree that has not been circled up with a pair goes on the inside of the radical. So the reduced or simplified radical is 3 square root 5. Now we can double check. We're going to see if the square root of 45 square root of 45 is the same as 3 root 5. They are the same, so we're good to go. Now I will try to find the midpoint. When it says average of x's, remember when you're averaging your grades, you add all the grades together and divide by the total number of grades you had. That's what we're doing here. We only have 2 x's, so we're going to add them together and divide by the number of x's we have, which is 2. So for the average of our x's, we will say 10 plus 13 divided by 2. We can put that into our calculator if we want, or we can just say 10 plus 13 is 23. And if we divide 23 by 2, we get 11.5. That's the average of our x's, so we get 11.5. Now we will average our y's. Our y terms are -2 and 4. So we will do, let me move my camera so you can see a little bit more. If I do -2 plus 4 and divide by 2, -2 plus 4 is going to give me +2. So this is equal to 2 over 2, which is equivalent to 1. So the average of my y's is 1. So now I've got the average of my x's and the average of my y's. If I'm finding my midpoint, again, a point is going to be a coordinate or an ordered pair. I'm going to just put a parenthesis and my x and my y. So that is going to be the total midpoint, and this will be the distance.